Sasa ukuja hapa, you have the best combination, you have the highest chance of seeing the big five in one country, and that country is Kenya. You want more? Come to athletics, which I'm sure most of you know. Athletics, we have the highest concentration of middle and long distance runners anywhere in the world. Okay? One day probably I'll show you a map of the people who have won middle and long distance races. It's just around Eldoret Airport. So Eldoret Parish, mko wapi? Eldoret Parish, they are not here. Ah, okay, I can see them. Okay? You need to celebrate those athletes. And of course, you have the great Eliud Kipchoge, the greatest marathoner of all time. He's the GOAT, greatest of all time. Okay? And so, Kenya is truly a blessed country. And the last one I will mention, because I can mention many things, is we have the best, most educated black people in the world. Let me explain. You know, sometimes you need, your confidence must be boosted by facts. Why does it say best educated people? Because it's on a proportionate basis. You see, Nigeria has a population of 220 million. Now, if you look at the most educated in terms of numbers, of course, Nigerians are number one. Because 1 in every 5 black people is a Nigerian. In the world, 1 in every 5 is a Nigerian. But in terms of proportion, Kenyans are 52 million. But in terms of the number of educated people relative to the population, Kenya is number 1. Now, in East Africa, if you go to any hotel, 9 out of 10, either 4 or 5-star hotels in East Africa is run by a Kenyan. Whether you're in Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, Uganda, name it, you will find a Kenyan running it. So, I could go on and on. The question is, why are we not rich? To reflect our status. We are the largest economy in East Africa. We are the largest. But many people in our region ask, why are we not in the league of the Koreas, the Singapores, the countries that inspired Vision 2030 in 2006? Why? Now, if I can provoke you enough at the end of this presentation, then you'll know why. I will have answered that question, and I hope to inspire then the Presbyterians to be the biggest church in East Africa. I hope to do so at the end of it. I hope you will feel inspired, because the title of today's topic is Redefining Leadership in a Changing World. The world is changing faster than you imagine, and if we change as fast, we can occupy our position. We are the country that invented mobile money transfer. I know sometimes you think M-Pesa is everywhere. The country that pioneered money transfer by phone is Kenya. And by 2013, the dynamics have changed since. In 2013, Safaricom accounted for 50% of the entire world's money transfer services by phone. Half was Safaricom, which means you. Why are Kenyans very receptive to technology? Wako na mashida mingi. There are problems. and they are receptive to anything that provides a solution. So I hope that you will be the Safaricom of the church. Okay? You will be that innovative and say, if we could invent money transfer services, okay? In 2007, remember M-Pesa began in 2007. If we could do that, why can't we be the pioneer in redesigning the church for the future? Remember, the faith doesn't change. It's cast in stone. Just like the 10 commandments that were given to Moses. Has anybody changed them? There is no church which has, you can't. It's cast in stone. But what is changing is the mode of delivery. Sindio? COVID, for example, changed a few things, and we went online. Has the church gone online in a big way? Are you number one? Are you number one? I can see you have not even measured it. You know, you have to measure it so that then you do research, then now it confirms you're actually number one. So we are here today to just say, why don't we reflect on who we are as Kenyans? What is our place in the world? What is our place in the church? And how do we prepare our people for that future which is unfolding very fast? Then we become relevant to them and we inspire them to be great people so that then when they go to the next life, they will say, I was in Kenya and the environment was excellent for me to maximize my potential and purpose as a person, and so Lord, I am coming home. That should be our mission statement. That should be who we are. We should think and say, when people go to the next life, they should be grateful they lived in a beautiful country called Kenya. Remember, we are the only country in the world which has all the climates of the world in one country. Tell me which country in the world has snow-capped mountains, a desert, a savanna, a tropical forest, a rift valley, beautiful lakes, beautiful beach, beautiful savanna, incredible flora and fauna, from wildlife to exotic trees to natural trees, all put in one country. Niambie. Tell me. There is none. You just go and think about it. Because I know you don't pay attention to it. Because you think, see, Mungu has blessed every country. It's not there. If you go to Uganda, they don't have a desert. But in Kenya, there's a beautiful desert called Chalbi. So if you want to study the world, you are in the country that God has blessed richly. We now must demonstrate as we go in the future that richness in terms of educated people, in terms of innovative people, in terms of people who are creative, and in terms of God's blessings. It's all here. So what is pulling us down? A few things. Just that are pulling us down. That if we re-engineer our minds, we will be great people. It's revolving around our attitudes. We need to refigure our attitudes, our mindsets, our approach to things to reflect that greatness. We need to tweak a few things in our country. Just a few things. And you will see us just blossom into greatness. And I will mention some of those things today. So we can go now to the first slide. Okay. So go to the second one. So I'm beginning with a quote from Wangari Maathai. Of course, how many of you know Wangari? Everybody's seen it. Okay? Now, this lady was not liked very much because she was a radical thinker. Okay? She won the Nobel Prize for Peace in 2004, but what was the reason why she was given a Nobel Prize? I know you'll say Green Belt Movement. The answer is no. It was not Green Belt Movement that gave her the Nobel Prize. Nobel Prizes are given to intellectuals, thinkers. She did a lot of observations and writings and speeches, and she connected the relationship between the environment and peace. And she had empirical evidence to say if the environment is good, there will always be peace. And as a result of her preachings, and remember she was not an environmentalist. She's a vet anatomist. She was teaching at the University of Nairobi. I chose her as our inspiration for today. That if you insist on that which you believe in, you will be successful. Okay? And I've given a quote there. She said, I know this is a dream we have for Africa. An Africa free of poverty, an empowered Africa. Those of us who understand, who feel strongly, must not tire. Hatuwezi choka. We must persist. The burden is on those who know. We are the ones who must take action. So whatever I'm going to say today is, it is us in this room, from every parish, from your moderators, your clerks, your treasurers, whatever title you have in the church, it is us in this room who are going to take action. In the next slide, we are discussing what is actually changing in the world. Because if we don't understand the changes, we cannot respond appropriately as Presbyterians. We must change to the changes in the world. Remember, there are things we don't change. The faith doesn't change. The Bible doesn't change. Just like the Quran doesn't change. But there are things also changing in our society that we must tweak our approach to the church. So, number one is democracy in the world is changing. There are a few crazy ones. Look at America. You know, they are redefining democracy in a crazy way. Look at what has happened in Brazil. It was inspired by Trump. And there are many other Trump people. And I'm sure even in this room, there are Trump-minded people. So, the human beings themselves are changing. The world is becoming more free. People can say what they want. Even those who are extremists, they say things. Okay? 2, storage and access to information. The world is changing so much. In the last 5 years, just look at the last 5, since 2017, we have stored more information than all the previous years since creation. Just in 5 years, we have stored more information than all the previous years since creation. We are storing information at incredible speed. Now, this storage of information means, they say, the internet never forgets, because people store it. And their servers, so much storage. So what does it mean for the church? Okay, I'm happy, for example, you have the church TV, okay? You have probably streaming it on Facebook. There are many things that you're doing to respond to technological changes. Internet speeds. Internet speeds are also changing at incredible. We are now at the stage where we are developing 5G. Most of you are on 4G. Some are still on Muleka Mwizi. Muleka Mwizi is on 2G. Okay? Now, 5G is evolving because of smartphones faster. Now, what is being researched now is 6G, which will be rolled in another 3 years. So 5G will come in, and then 6G, and I don't know what else. The implications of that is that you can access information at incredible speed. 5G, you just need to touch. There will be no buffering. Just touch and the information pops. So the speed at which information is being disseminated globally is at an incredible speed. So a story, what does it mean, for example, for the church or any other institution? It means you have to be very careful. Information can be just shared at an instant. Poop. So, incredible speed. Number 4 is global logistics, how things move globally. You know, we have redefined the planet in an incredible way. So, global logistics is also changing, how things move around the world. Okay? Global culture is also changing very fast because people pick a lot of information from the internet. So, therefore, whatever happens in one corner of the planet can be transmitted to another corner at incredible speed. Your children could be watching something, what happened, say, in Ukraine. By evening, that has been adopted as a habit in Nairobi. Instant. So the world is changing at incredible speed, even the culture. Because what's culture? It is people's behaviors and people's habits. That's culture. And so it is impacting on us. The other one is climate change. Okay? Climate change is a product of how we have treated the earth in the last 200 years only. Just 200 years. But look at how we thought we were doing maendeleo. Remember, we were thinking we were doing maendeleo the last 200 years. But in the process, we have produced more carbon than the earth is able to absorb. That's climate change. So, what absorbs carbon? If we run a factory, it produces some smoke. What is supposed to have absorbed it? The trees, mainly. Now, we are cutting trees faster than is able to absorb. Because that's the way God has designed the planet. So therefore, we have to respond to this crisis and say, we have upset the earth from what God had intended. And so therefore, we must repair it. How do we repair it? What's the role of the church in the repair of the planet? What's the role of the church in the repair of the planet? It's not that we don't have educated people. See, I've told you we have the most educated black people. In fact, Kenya should be the leader of the black world because we have the most educated black people. Then, America, in the last few years, since the fall of the Berlin Wall, had been the global cop. But that position has been slowly eroded. What does it mean when there is no obvious global leader? And if you look at the global leader in the next 5 years, it will most likely be the Chinese. Now, what religion do the Chinese worship? Chinese? Have you ever thought that if the world is led by a non-Christian nation, it will change? Are you ready for that change? They are Buddhists, some of them, but much of China have no affiliation to religion. Now, because the internet speeds, so look at the Presbyterian church in where you are home, Tokoto. watching a movie produced in China, which doesn't talk about God. If it is launched today in Beijing, the next day, it will be something children are talking about in Kikuyu town. Instant. Think of the world being led by a non-Christian country. I know you have not thought about it, but it's coming. Then global debt problem, Danny. There's some data I'll show you shortly about our global debt problem. Many countries have borrowed, and then COVID even accelerated that borrowing because there was no world production. So we have a debt problem. Kenya kuna hiyo deni. Now, that deni, who is Kenya? Kenya is your congregants, your people. What does that mean? Okay? Then Africa has the youngest population. And I'll show you, there are some maps I'll show you to just demonstrate. In fact, the next map I'll show you is to demonstrate to you how young we are. The rest of the world is aging. Sub-Saharan Africa is young. What are the implications for the whole world and the church when we have the youngest population and the rest of the world is aging? And then Asia is maturing. For the last 30 or so years, Asia has been seen as, they were called the emerging markets of the world. They are the ones who used to attract investors. Now, they are maturing, so because we have the younger population, the whole world shifts their attention to Africa. Okay? So it means, for example, much of even the church elsewhere in the world will shift its attention to. Now, look at Korea, for example. There's a church called the Moonies. Okay? They have reached their limit in the members in Korea. So if they want new members and they are young, where will they come? So you will compete in the next few years with the Moonies. Now, if you don't connect the message with young people as a church, what happens to the Moonies if they connect better than you? You lose your membership, isn't it? Think like that. That's the attitude I wanted you to have. So that then, when decisions about how do we proceed as a church to the next stage, you know, yeah, you have a world view that the world is actually changing faster. And then the final mention, because there are many things I could mention about what's changing. Global inequality. Those who have and those who don't, it's growing fast, wider. How rich is the richest man in the world? And in the last 1 year, the number one position has changed 3 times. It has said it used to be Bill Gates. Then Bill Gates was removed from number one position. Jeff Bezos took it. Then Jeff Bezos was dethroned last year by Elon Musk. And then last month, a Frenchman called Bernard Arnault took number one position. I know most of you don't know the Frenchman, but the ladies in this room know him. Because they use his products a lot. They carry a Louis Vuitton bag. Our perfumes, his perfumes, if you go to any shop, Bulgari, that's Bernard Arnault. He's now the richest man in the world. How much is he worth? Close to $200 billion. What's Kenya's GDP? Our total income together as all Kenyans? 110. So one person has the same income, twice the income of all of us collectively as Kenyan, 52 million. Sasa. You have seen the inequality. Yeah? It has never happened like that in history. So we are in a world which is a bit, heavy. The rich are too rich, the poor are too poor. But remember, we are in the same planet. Can we afford to have huge differences? We can't afford. So, ideally, taxation is supposed to bridge the gap. One of the principles of taxation is to redistribute. But the taxation system is failing to redistribute because the rich are supposed to be taxed. So then you use that to help the poor because you are in one planet, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So let's go then to the next map, which is now explaining what I've talked about. So this one is the world median ages. The parts which are green are the youngest. The parts which are red are the oldest. Just look at the whole world. That's the whole world. So the country with the youngest population is Niger. The average age in that country is 15 years. Followed by Uganda, 15. Followed by Mali, 16. Kenya is at 19. The average age in Kenya is 19. The oldest countries, the oldest is Germany and Japan. In fact, these are figures of 2015. The latest I have by reading through is 52. They are now at 52. Now, if you go to a country where the average age is 52, that means half the population is over 52 years and the other half below. In Germany now, they are desperate for immigrants. So when there was a war in Syria, what did they do? They admitted 1 million Syrians in the name of being generous, but they were actually desperate for wafanyikazi. They took 1 million of them because there was nobody to sweep the streets. Watu wamekuwa wazee. The world is changing. So look at it this as Europe. You can see Europe is red, Canada, Russia, even China, Australia. They are growing old. So in terms of demand for church services, there is no demand. Those are aging populations. Okay? When you go to a country where people value pets instead of human beings, my friend, the world has changed. Next slide is about how fast the world is growing in terms of population. And you can see that do we have we lost the PowerPoint? Oh, there it is. Okay? So, if you look at the way the world is growing, that is the rate of growth of the population. You can see sub-Saharan Africa, blue. The blue one is the highest. The red is the lowest. So you can see Europe is shrinking, virtually disappearing. They are no longer growing. Because if you look at a growth rate, like a country, the red country there is Ukraine. Okay? And then Germany, that area. It is actually contracting population. And ours is growing average. Average for sub-Saharan Africa is 3%. Okay? Remember, for a population to replace itself, it has to grow at 2.2. 2.2 children per woman to replace itself. Because you replace your parent, and then you replace your mother, both parents, too, and then there has to be a little 0.2 juu for those who don't have children. Yeah? So just think of it. Our belt, sub-Saharan Africa, is the only one that still produces children faster than the death rate. So we replace ourselves and we have a bonus. The rest are not able to replace themselves. The next slide is about debt. Okay, Danny. Now, if you look at the most indebted country in the world is Japan. Remember, we had said Japan has the oldest population, and it's also the most indebted. So these debts are going to weigh down our country. And ours, you will see anyway in the presentation, ours is somewhere small there. Kenya is at 70% of GDP. The stock of debt relative to your GDP. That is your annual income. Okay? So you can see the whole world is saddled with debt. So when you receive this presentation, you'll be able to see, who are the people suffering in the world because they are indebted. The next slide, I'm just explaining what's changing in the world, just using pictures. The next slide is climate change, issues of climate change. That is Dubai. On their days which are heavily polluted. So, what you see there is called smoke. Smoke is the pollution, okay? Now, they are popping out, their skyscrapers are popping out of. Do you see Nairobi reaching here? Or Mombasa? So, we need to do something to protect our environment to avoid situations like those. This is already happening in other countries. I was just giving the example of Dubai. Next slide. This slide, I didn't want to put a name to it because we in Kenya are culprits. This is the state of corruption in the world. The yellow ones are the least corrupt. The red ones are the most corrupt. Okay? Now, there are 3 countries in Africa that are clearly yellow. Okay? The one down there is which country? Botswana. Correct. Botswana is the least corrupt country in the world. What's the GDP per capita of Botswana? You can Google, you have a phone. GDP per capita income of Botswana. Just Google. Per capita income of Botswana. Who has the answer? Who has the answer? See, you're on 4G. Google. Chap, chap. Per capita income of Botswana. $15,000. Any other? That is on what we call power purchasing parity. The capacity of the money to pay, to buy something. But there's the real one. The real 6,800, correct. That's the real GDP. And so both of you are correct. It's just how you interpret, how economists interpret them. Okay? Now, look at, can you Google the one for Kenya? Kenya. 2,000, yes. The PPP one, the power purchasing parity, it's probably just slightly higher. Yeah? Okay, so let's use the real GDP for the sake of time. So our per capita income in Kenya is $2,000. The average annual income per person. In Botswana, it is 6,800. Now, let's compare the two. What does Botswana have and what does Kenya have? I've told you what Kenya has. Botswana, 80% of Botswana is Kalahari Desert. 80%. Same size. Botswana and Kenya are exactly the same size. 80% Kalahari Desert. They don't have the coffee. They don't have any runners who are talking about. They have a few 800-meter runners, and that's it. The core driver of the difference in income is they are less corrupt than us. That's all. When you have less corruption in a society, what does it do? Less corruption means hard workers are rewarded. It's a reward. So if you want more production, remember GDP is output. If you want more output in an economy, you have to reward those who work hard. Similarly, even the church. We must reward hard workers if you want the church to grow. It's logic. It's in here. So, no corruption, please, in the church. And if the church must grow, we must reward the presbytery that produces that. In fact, SG, there must be, and the biggest award is the one that produces the highest sadaka, or I don't know how you measure income in your church. But whatever that is, there has to be reward for hard work. If you want a society to progress, reward for hard work. If there is reward for thuggery, okay. The next slide is how wealth is distributed. And I'll just mention one figure, because you will receive this presentation at your, I'm sure there's an email which will be sent to you. 0.7% of the world population controls 41% of the wealth. What does that tell you? Kuna shida sio? Now let me give you the figure for Kenya. 6% of Kenya's population control 50% of the wealth. Only 6. So we have a world problem. How wealth is distributed. What is the role of the church in redistribution of wealth? To me, that will be one in your part of your mission statement as a church. Because we can't have a world which is so heavily skewed to the rich in wealth, where people live in opulence when people live in slums. Nairobi, I think, is a case study of its own. 55% of Nairobi live in informal settlements. The population of Nairobi, 55% live in informal settlements. That's why they determine a governor all the time. Now, how can we be the green city in the sun, which is the most beautiful climate? You know, I always argue with economists and say, the largest construction site in the world is Dubai. The largest construction site in the world. What's the average temperature in Dubai? Average temperature in Dubai? 45 thereabouts. How can the world congregate at Dubai? The average temperature in Nairobi is 26. Which one should be the headquarters of the world, surely? Should be Nairobi. The best expatriate life, all these unemployment problems, people will be flocking to Nairobi. That's why it's called the green city in the sun. Very comfortable climate, right at the equator. So therefore, we need to deal with this problem, inequality. Okay? So therefore, with those maps, therefore, what does that mean for the church? If you look at the next slide, the next slide is different generations and their view of religion. This is empirical studies. Okay? Let me just define this generation so that then we are on the same page. The silent generation are those born before 1939. Second World War. Are there any here? Any was this? Before 1939? After the Second World War, it's called the baby boomers. There was actually a baby boom after the Second World War. And then Generation X begins from 1960. So anybody 1960, 1970 born? I'm sure majority of you. The millennials is called Generation Y. Those who are born after 1980. This generation are divided by 20 years, 20-year generations. So, from 1980 to the year 2000, okay, those are the millennials. Then Generation Z are those who are born after the year 2000. They are now arriving at the workplace. Generation Z. And then, those who are born from 2020 up to now are called Generation Alpha. We have now gone to A. Okay? So therefore, with that in mind, I wanted you to look at, if you look at that graph, okay, on your left is unaffiliated, those who don't believe in religion. And you can see from the older ones, they were very religious. Okay, in one way or another. As you then go into the lower levels, look at how those who don't declare any religion have changed. If you look at the left side, you have seen how it has widened, isn't it? So your children are looking at religion less and less as important to their lives. What's that an indicator of? That we are probably disconnected with our children. That's an indicator. There's something that the church is not connecting with young people. And as you review your strategy as a church, I want part of these resolutions is what do we need to do as a church to connect with young people? And it's not just Presbyterians alone. It is all the churches. Why? If you look at the right side, that gray, is as Christianity is shrinking, non-Christians are expanding. And which ones are those? It's Islam. Ask the next question. The second question you need to ask yourself is, what is Islam doing that Christianity is not doing, that they are actually expanding congregations and Christianity is? So two questions. The first question is young people, and the second question is non-Christian is expanding. So you might think, no, probably it is, spirituality is dropping. No, it's not dropping. It is moving somewhere else. So does that mean we have not found relevance in their lives? Remember, the doctrine doesn't change. The form changes. So are we changing our form to suit as the world changes? I don't know. That's a question I'm posing to the church, isn't it? Okay. Next slide. Now, what is bombarding these young people? I wanted just to give you an example. What is bombarding them? Okay? Remember, doctrine doesn't change, the form changes. Okay? So, we are in an era of artificial intelligence and metaverse. Now, do we have any millennials in this room? People who were born after the year 1980. I thought they are proud and millennials. One. You want to say only two? Hey, yeah. I thought you guys are, gang who? You understand artificial intelligence, didn't you? Okay? So the implications is that the way technology, they look at technology, for example, as young people. We need to appreciate them as older people. And say, probably, actually, you are seeing things slightly different from the way we do. And how do we then engage you? For example, okay, the concept of the metaverse. What does that mean for the church? Because very soon you will have a robot preaching better than a human preacher. And that may connect better with young people than the actual preacher. How many of you, there's a new app, artificial intelligence application called Chat GPT. How many of you are aware of it? Chat GPT, one guy there. Two, I can see the millennials are aware of it. The rest of you? What does that application is an open, you can download it. It's free. I downloaded it. Okay, it was the fastest download of any application in the world ever. And it was launched just 6 weeks ago. And within 5 days, it had 1 million users. Within 5 days. Okay? And of course, now there are millions of users. So I downloaded it myself. And then I asked myself, this app, what is it? What is the first application it's going to kill? Those of you who have used it, which I can see the guy in red. Which application is it going to kill? ChatGPT. You can see you don't know. The first application is going to challenge is Google. Those I know the older generation are using Google. After this, I'm sure all of you are going to download ChatGPT. Just a chat and GPT. That's what it is. Because it can write a thesis for you. You tell it, can you draft for me an application letter to a technology company? Within 3 seconds, it has drafted for you the application letter. Sasa, if I then tell them, ChatGPT, I then put and say, can you give me the sermon of Reverend Wayenya? What it does is that it goes through the databases, picks all the keywords Reverend Wayenya has said, and within seconds, it then drafts the sermon. So why do I need Reverend Wayenya? Remember what I told you earlier? Very high internet speeds and storage. So all his speeches, all his sermons have been stored. So I just need an application to summarize for me. I don't need him to come to repeat. And I can be anywhere in the world. And I receive Reverend Wayenya's sermon. Sasa hiyo dunia, mko tayari? Okay, next. So what does that mean, therefore? If you look at the next slide, your strategic posture as a church then needs to change. In my view, okay, what does strategy is? Strategy is how you do something successfully. How you do something successfully. So I want you to start thinking through, your mindset must evolve then and say, we are no longer about grandiose things. Strategy is more about doing a few things extremely well. So I want you to choose today, as a church, what are these few things that if we do, we connect with young people, okay, in their space, we deliver doctrine much better, much clearer to them, and they connect with it. And we do it very well. Is that too hard? It looks simple, but it's not simple. I guarantee you. It's not simple. Why? A lot of you are coming with biases. You are coming with a bias of how you see the world. I know I have thrown a few words at you, but it's not enough. You need to think more deeply. It's actually very deep thinking. And say, how do we then prepare the church for a tomorrow which is very different from today? So no more grandiose plans. What is it about? Choosing your niche and now doing it extremely well. Okay? Next slide is what the strategy imperative then means. Okay? That you must then be very clear of the direction the institution takes. The how part. Okay? The mission and the vision of the church is defined in the Bible, so you don't have to repeat those. Those ones are cast in stone. But the how is not cast in stone. So I would like you to start thinking through and saying, how should the church, the Presbyterian church, rethink itself on how it is going to connect with young people? Because to me, that's your mission statement now. Young people. And we connect with them. Okay? Otherwise, you end up with what I have put there, round holes and square pegs. You are not fitting in. There is no connection between your message and the recipient. Because the recipient is looking at you and it's like, you know, as you sit there and you quote a wrong verse as the reverend, young people are already verifying you. It's like, amesema uongo. Instant verification. Because they have the technology. So, how do we build relevance to a technology-savvy population going forward? In the next slide is usually whenever you change strategy, in management we say structure must change. Because structure follows strategy. Now, in many companies, even where I work, we review structure every year. Because we say, next year we are planning to do this. So, what elements of our structure must we tweak so that we can deliver? Because structure is a delivery mechanism. Now, I want you in this meeting to start rethinking the church structure. Now, the structure of the church is defined in the Constitution. So we might now sit down and say, if this is the structure, the strategy where we want to go, do we have the delivery mechanism to get us there? I don't know. Okay? But the little I read about your Constitution, I saw you can't deliver. Let me explain why. And I'm telling you, as your own brother, okay, from a management perspective. Okay? Now, there's a question I posed to Francis. Probably didn't know what I was asking. I asked him, how much is the stock of wealth of the church? Then he explained to me, okay, there's a reason why Family Bank is here. All of it is in Family Bank. Okay? So when he told me the quantum of all the parishes put together, then the next question I asked him is, how come then you don't own Family Bank? If all your deposits put together, okay, is this much, then you should own that bank. Okay? Then he told me, I have no power over a parish. So I'm like, okay, if you have no power over a parish, then why are you a family? It's like the father of the house has no control over the children. That's a structure problem. Okay? Let me explain to you the Catholic Church. You know, the Catholic Church is regimented, the most regimented church. Okay? We have a Vatican Bank. Even in Kenya, we have Caritas. Okay? We have an insurance company, Patches. Very powerful. Because it is centralized. Not that it's centralized, is the cardinal can actually give instructions on how to do mega projects together as a family. But from the way I saw your constitution and the structure defined there, you can't do projects jointly. So what happens is you are powerful as small entities. Can you imagine if you are a collective entity, summation together? If those of you have done maths, you know, if you combine them together, we sit and we say, we are going to do a mega project. Now, that is what is going to capture the imagination and attention of young people. When you start doing mega projects, then young people will say, this is a progressive church. I'm in. But right now, you're doing small things. Now, when you combine all those small things, they actually have expended a lot of resources, but very low impact. End result is young people want things which are big, dynamic, mega. Now, the minute they see you, kadogo, they say, that's not a progressive church. So I'm posing a question. So today, Francis, I have revealed what I thought. Structure must follow strategy. Okay? Next slide. So, let me put a spanner in the works, okay, by saying a few things by way of summary. So therefore, we need then to sort of say, look at Islam, for example. Islam says they are a way of life. Okay? Remember, 97% of the Old Testament is the Quran. It's the same. And it was written about culture and norms of the same region. Okay? So, they structured it and tell their congregation, we are a way of life. As we are secular, we separate the state and the church. Do you think if we go that direction, is that the correct thing? I don't know. I'm posing the question to the leaders of the church. Start thinking. Can we say the Presbyterian church is a way of life? I have no answer. I'm posing the question. Okay? Because evidence shows that that alone is what is driving Islam. It's a way of life. Okay? The next one is, how will the church continue to meet the spiritual needs of a diverse and changing society? A diverse and changing society. There are huge generational shifts. We don't know, and they are faster now. Okay? Remember, it's the first time in history, first time, that within the same family, household, we have 4 generations that view the world differently. 4 generations. Your grandparents, your parents, yourself, and your children all look at the world and in the same house. First time in history. So, similarly, the church must then find a way of how to build relevance to each of the 4 generations. The next question. What has been the experience of the church with millennials, Generation X, baby boomers? Is it likely to change with Generation Z and Alpha? As I said earlier on, doctrine remains the same, nothing changes. It is the form in which we deliver to each audience. Okay? In marketing, it is called market segmentation. You segment so that you address the needs of each audience. Is it time the Presbyterian Church does market segmentation? Most likely, yes. Maybe, I don't know. And then finally, could technology be the solution for a fragmented church when you have different audiences? So we say, okay, the reverends on a Sunday, for example, you'll have the church service physically will be for Generation X and baby boomers. And then we say, how do we then create another service for generations, the children? And we become very creative about how to deliver that one. And then we create another one, probably, because if you look at Generation Z, they like YouTube video. They like streaming content. Okay? The millennials, Y, usually like Facebook, Twitter. That's the generation. So we have different technologies to address different audiences. Is that about time? Maybe. So everyone, market segmentation and how to deliver to each audience. Then you capture the imagination of each audience. And as technology progresses, we don't know what the people who are being born now, those are Generation Alpha. We don't know what they are going to like when they come of age. And we could test it when they are coming for baptism, we test, okay? You know, confirmation, I don't know what you guys call that, yours. How do we test that? So in the next 5 years, we should have prepared ourselves on how to address the young generation as they come for baptism, as they come for the various stages in the church growth. How do we then capture? And you prepare in advance. You don't wait and alafu unastukia wako hapa kwa mlango and they don't like the church. It will be too late. You must prepare yourself by predicting where they are moving and playing to their relevance. So then the rest of it is just a few, okay? What happens if you don't change? So a picture there. So this came from agriculture, productivity. If you change your technology, you change your output. Sindio? If you change your approach, you change your output. So the picture on the left, that's all they used to use horses. You couldn't feed the world. Okay? Now, new technology comes and woo, you can feed the world with the same land. So look at the church that way. If you look at the next slide, companies which didn't change on time. I'm sure you know Kodak. What did Kodak do? In the 70s, Kodak controlled 90% of the film market. 90. So it was the market. Then, who discovered digital technology for cameras? It was the same Kodak. There was somebody internally there who discovered and said the world is moving, but how come Kodak is dead? Killed by the same discovery they themselves discovered. It's because they ignored it. Then other people saw what they had discovered and ran with it. Now, Kodak doesn't exist. It died. Same thing for Motorola. Sony is struggling. Nokia, number one in mobile phone, until Apple came from computers to mobile phones in 2007, produced the iPhone, and boom, it blew Kodak out of its existence. So therefore, I want to pose this challenge to the church. Are you the Nokia or Kodak of the church? Good question. Senior? If you don't change, I'm sure even the answers for the next stage of the church are inside here, isn't it? But if you don't do it and another church picks it up and runs with it, what happens? You lose the congregation, isn't it? Correct. Okay? Now let me tell you how some successful companies then have done it. Like Coke. How old is Coke this year? Coke was established in 1896. 1896. And in the first year, they sold 9 bottles. Only 9. Today, they no longer talk about bottles, they talk about servings. Because they serve many things. Okay? They serve, actually, they have 3,500 products that they serve people around the world. So those 3,500 products are 2 billion servings. Either soda or water or juice or chai. There are many things that they sell all over the world. 2 billion every day. Now, this is a company that changes itself when the world changes. That's why it has been able to survive since 1896. How old is the church, Presbyterian church, globally? Globally? How old? I'm sure you know. Reverend Waenya? 100 years, 200, 300 or 500, whatever, okay? Can you guarantee to us today it's going to exist another 500 years? Guarantee? Guarantee? I can see you are not sure. Hakuna guarantee. Okay? Sour. So it's important. So companies are becoming successful, some are dying. Okay? Now, an interesting one is that one called Southwestern Airlines. Southwest Airlines, okay? It was very successful until 2 years ago, the founder died. The employees were very loyal to the founder. When the founder died, it is now struggling. Last month, December, it had the highest number of flight cancellations in the US, 7,900. Then people asked themselves, what happened? They were too loyal to the founder. For the church to survive, let us not depend on an individual, let us depend on the institution. When you build very strong institutions, they are less and less dependent on an individual. That's the lesson. So, as I then end, if you look at the next slide, familiar guy? Yes. You know this guy. He became the president of the US in very unusual circumstances. Extremely unusual. 72% of America is white. White. Okay? Another 8% is Latinos. So 80% of the country is actually white. But this guy, with his blackness, was able to weave through to the White House. It means if you have the will and if you have the intention and with God's grace, you will get what you want. Sindio? So I want you to be inspired by Barack Obama by doing something extraordinary, and he could see the pathway to where he wanted to go. I am sure the Presbyterian Church is like Obama, sindio? You are seeing so many obstacles, but you are seeing the path to where you want to go. All you just need to do is the will the nerve of steel to say, I will do it. So this is what he said. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are the ones, the change that we seek. We are the change that we seek. You are the change for the Presbyterian Church. There is no other. Are there any other leaders in Kenya other than you guys? Sindio? So let's do it. In the next slide, I'm sure you're familiar with Noah's Ark. Okay? Everything I need to know about life, I learned from Noah's Ark. Okay? There are 11 lessons. I'll just mention a few. This you'll read on your own. Okay? The first one says, don't miss the boat. Are you going to miss the boat? Number 2, remember that we are all in the same boat. Is there anybody inside here who belongs to another family? All of you are Presbyterians. Number 3, plan ahead. It wasn't raining when Noah's Ark was built. The church is in a good position now, but it could be better, isn't it? But you don't wait until you become a Kodak. It's dead. Number 4, stay fit. When you're really old, someone may ask you to do something really big. So remember KFC. KFC was built by Colonel Sanders when he had retired from the army at the age of 65. Number 5, don't listen to the critics. Just get on with the job that needs to be done. There will be so many people who will criticize your church and say, oh, you are taking it in another direction. It's because you are visionary. You are seeing the future at just now. Number 6, build your future on a high ground. I want you to define what that high ground is for the church today. For safety sake, travel in pairs. So lazima twende pamoja. Number 8, speed isn't always an advantage. The snails were on board with the cheetahs. So some of you, are, based on what you have heard from me today, will be the cheetahs. Twende sasai. Please don't leave the snails. Twende pamoja. When you are stressed, float a while. Take a breather. Come to Milele here and say, let's go to Milele. We have argued until we don't agree. Let's go for a retreat. And then number 10, remember the ark was built by amateurs. The Titanic was built by professionals. So don't say I'm an amateur. I am very low in church doctrine, intellectual capacity ni kidogo. They are the people who built Noah's Ark. And it was successful. We will not be here today. And number 11, no matter the storm, when you are with God, there is always a rainbow waiting. Mungu yuko, sindio? Finally, there's an American black poet called Maya Angelou. She died a few years ago, and she said this: I have learned that people will forget what you said. And I know you'll forget what I said. People will forget what you did. I've had some drama here on stage. But people will never forget how you made them feel. I am hoping you will not forget how I have made you feel. And I wanted to make you feel challenged. And I hope it has happened. So finally, I end with a very, very famous quote by Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple. Okay? He has written his biography, and this is how he ended. Stay hungry, stay foolish. What he meant is always have the hunger for knowledge, for new things. Okay? You never know what you're going to confront. Keep storing in your brain. Okay? And he said, stay foolish. What he meant is you never live long enough to know everything. Keep learning. Okay? So to be able to learn, okay, don't bring that ujuaji that I know. There are so many things you don't know. So I told you, in the last 5 years, we have stored more information than the previous lifetimes, all of them combined together. Storage. So if you come here and say, "Mi najua," how much do you know in multiple terabytes of information? I even don't know the names. Names are being coined for the amount of information we have stored in bytes. So forever. So therefore, I'm the one who has put the one in the middle there in red. And I said, you forever become a wise fool. For the church to then grow bigger and bigger all the time, it needs people who are wise, but who humble themselves to say, I don't know, unijulishe. And if you don't know, surely, just ask. Your brother, who you thought never went to school, could surprise you with what they know. Okay? Finally, asante sana. Thank you very much.
Hiya, we can give a better clap for Dr. And thank you so much. The parting shot is stay hungry and stay foolish. And that should be our inspiration. If you think you know that you don't know. So kindly, that is the attitude of learning and the desire to continue learning from each other. That is where we should be as Presbyterians. And one of, I'm giving you time now to coin your questions. One of the problem, and the major problem we have as Presbyterians, is that we always think we are ahead. We always think that we are ahead and we know everything. The word of the day is that we don't know. We don't know. So Paul says, if you are thinking so highly of yourself, then know what he says. Now, thank you so much, Dr. for that. And we are really challenged. We appreciate. And we want to give 5 questions. Kyoge will be the first one, or comment, so that, can we see any question, any comment? Yes? Kyoge, your head was up. Okay, Kyoge was up. Okay. Kyoge, to go first. Reverend Peters, second. Reverend Kaira, third. Reverend Kagwamba, Gesha, third, fourth. Any other question? Finally, I can't see who is that. So finally, we have, yes, it's you. It'll be the, start with Kyugi.
Thank you so much. Mine is not a question per se, but I think it's a contribution towards today's topic. And I think it's an eye-opener, especially on the issue of tomorrow's church. Noting that the doctrine does not change, but the form. When I just seen my, I don't know whether it's spiritual hand, I not least, but I have this issue. As a church, Presbyterian church, there's this thing of the groups. I don't know whether we removed them or we decentralized them and all that. I think that's where we need to get back, because if you want to keep this church relevant in the next millennium or 500 or 100 years to come, we need to think of strategies of keeping the church in line, and especially at times such as this, when, as you say, we think we know, but we are very far away from knowing it.